If you're looking to improve your contact and learn to truly compress the golf ball at impact, then you're going to want to watch this video, which will talk about the necessary wrist angles that you need throughout the swing and specifically at impact to deliver that perfect contact every single time. Getting truly solid contact on your golf shots requires a certain amount of shaft lean to be present at impact. And the reason for that is that the sweet spot of your golf club isn't right at the bottom of these grooves on groove number 1 or number 2. The sweet spot's closer to groove number 4, 5 or 6. It's higher up the club face. And in order to be able to get your golf ball to touch those grooves, you'll see if you set up that at setup that golf ball's really just at groove number 1 or 2. In order to get higher up the face, you need to have some shaft lean to be able to put those higher grooves onto the golf ball. And in order to achieve that, you need very specific wrist angles at impact that are different from those that you have at setup. A great exercise really to help you to see how to compress the ball, and compressing the ball really just means achieving this shaft lean that I just described. In order to get that, you need to have specific delivery conditions of the club. A nice little exercise I like to use is to take a towel and lay it down on the ground just behind the ball. Effectively, you're creating an obstacle here in the air that if you weren't delivering the shaft lean, if you were making the error of prematurely uncocking your wrists, widening the swing arc, you'd strike the towel before the ball. The goal here when you do this exercise of compressing the ball is via the better wrist angles, which I'll talk to you about in a second. The better wrist angles allow you to keep that club head away from the ground, higher away from the ground for longer in this delivery portion of the swing, and then at impact delivering that perfect shaft lean to be able to hit the center of the ball and compress the ball perfectly. So this exercise will begin to help you train those wrist angles if you don't have them already. Let me just talk to you about the specifics of those wrist angles and then we'll get into some practice. So the specific wrist angles you need in terms of impact versus setup is you need to have more lead wrist flexion. What does that mean? Well, that means taking the wrist from this slightly cupped or extended condition, pushing the handle forward and very much flattening or somewhat flexing this lead wrist, twisting it down. Pushing the handle forward and flattening the lead wrist gives me this shaft lean and also reduces the loft that I deliver to the ball. So lower loft, better compression, more distance. So the lead wrist goes from this slightly extended condition to more of a flexed condition. The trail wrist goes from a slightly extended condition to a more extended condition. So as I flex my lead wrist, my trail wrist is actually going to bend back more. So this is the desirable wrist angles that I'm looking for at impact. I've got more trail wrist extension, so I'm bending my trail wrist back more, and I've got more lead wrist flexion. So I'm flexing my lead wrist and extending my trail wrist. That's the shaft lean that you see all these top players able to produce when they hit their shots on the television. Now, we can give you drills to do that. I'll also be measuring that shortly using hack motion, but I want to start out just using this towel drill, a very simple concept, but an extremely effective way to start to introduce these wrist angles into your golf swing. First one I'm going to hit here is going to be one that would hit the towel if it was in place. I've moved the towel to the side for a second. I'm going to hit one where I don't compress the ball. I flip the wrist slightly, I allow the shaft here to line up at impact, and I go ahead and hit the shot. It may not look like a terrible shot, particularly from a ground indoors, from a mat surface. You can really get away with a lot of these poor wrist conditions at impact, hitting from this artificial ground, than you can when you're actually out on the grass. But I'm going to go ahead and hit one which, if the towel was in place here, I would certainly strike the towel. I'm going to utilize poor wrist angles, and certainly this won't be compressed. But as I say, the shot might look okay on the screen. Let's go ahead and hit one of those. Okay, definitely not compressed. Decent enough strike in a sense, although it was a bit thin. That talks to the fact that I said you're going to hit lower on the club face, so you're not truly going to compress the ball. That was a 6-iron there that's gone 152 yards. It's really not what I want at all. You'll also see there that the launch angle at 19 degrees is a little too high as well. So that's because as I've delivered this club, I've delivered it with less than ideal wrist angles. I'm letting the shaft just start to overtake my hands. That's going to add loft to my impact on my delivery. It's going to hit the ball higher and lose me potential distance. As I say, 152 really isn't very far at all. Now I'm going to go ahead and hit one. I'm going to introduce the towel. I'm going to place it behind the ball as an obstacle for my swing. So now I'm going to put the towel in place just behind the golf ball. How far behind the ball you place this towel varies depending on a few factors. The thickness of your towel, how high off the ground it is, the club that you're using, and also your skill level to begin with. If you're not very good at this, putting the towel too close to the ball is just going to lead to perpetual frustration. You're not going to be able to do it at all. So start out with a little bit of an experiment here. I've got this about one grip width or one grip length behind the golf ball. Okay, so that as I swing back, I'm just going to miss the towel in my takeaway, and then I'm certainly going to try and miss it in my delivery. Let me go and hit one and we'll see what we get in terms of different strike and different distance. Completely different shot. Completely different shot. I felt I hit higher up on the face there. It just felt very, very solid. That ball's gone more than 10 yards, nearly 20 yards further than that first one. And my launch angle came down there by 4 degrees. So I was able to launch the ball at 15 degrees with this 6-iron instead of the 19 that I did previously. That's a change in wrist angles, which was facilitated by the towel being there and my desire or my intent to miss the towel. So I can create these desirable wrist angles via this training drill. This is an exercise you can do immediately. You can take it straight to your simulator, straight to the driving range. Next time you practice, you can place something like this behind the ball that will immediately show you whether or not you're delivering the desirable wrist angles to compress the ball. And if you're not, you'll get the feedback that you're not, and you'll be able to practice improving on those specific wrist angles that I discussed previously. So let me show you what that would look like and measure this lead wrist using hack motion for these next few shots. The sensors on the lead wrist, I was talking about the extension and the flexion discussion that we needed to understand. Remember, I need more flexion in this lead wrist at impact than I have at setup. And if I got that wrong, if I had more extension, I'd look like I was delivering the club with this additional loft. The shaft would likely be leaning backwards rather than forward, and I certainly wouldn't be able to compress the ball. So let me hit one like that again with no shaft lean, and it's intentionally letting the club head overtake. One that, once again, that if the towel was back on the ground here, I would definitely hit the towel. So this is going to be no compression, but maybe a reasonable outcome. Let's go ahead and hit one. So I got the feedback on that swing that I was too extended at impact with my lead wrist. Too extended. I thinned that one again, very much hit clean or the top of the ball. The distance once again has dropped down to 150. The launch angle was lower than the 19 before because I thinned it. I hit it so poorly. So the contact really wasn't there at all. I'm going to go ahead now and just put that towel in place and try to get a sense of more lead wrist flexion. So bending that lead wrist more forward at impact, like this. I can see there on the hack motion, the live feeling there of the avatar, I've got like 6 degrees of flexion. When I hit that ball, I had 14 degrees of extension. So there's quite a big difference there in what I was doing. Let's put the towel back in place. I'm going to move it a little bit closer to the ball for me. Yeah, that looks good. Just make sure I can miss that. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and hit one. I've got to miss this towel, and to do that, I've got to have more lead wrist flexion at impact. So I immediately got the feedback that I got that in range. I actually mishit it slightly towards the toe, so I'll go ahead and hit another one in a minute. But I got the lead wrist at impact into a position that was essentially flat. 0 degrees of flexion or extension. We talked about that being desirable. That's really, really good. So from 23 degrees of extension at setup to 0 at impact. That's a nice movement in the direction that I want to go. I didn't quite get the center of the club face, as I said, so I'll go ahead and do one more. But the towel being behind the ball there means that I have to delay the release of my wrist angles to help me compress the ball. If I was to release them too soon, this club's going to come crashing down into this towel, and you'd certainly get that feedback if you were practicing by yourself. So one more time, miss the towel, compress the ball. Much better strike. And again, that's 2 in a row where I got the impact, wrist angle in the right place. I was able to do that through some understanding of what I need to do, and really that's the key here. Understanding how the wrists need to move and where they need to be in time and space in order for you to make these changes. And really the best way to be able to do that is measure what's happening at the wrist level. The Hack Motion wrist sensor really does allow you to do that. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you click down in the description. There's links to further videos on wrist training and other drills that you can do to help you improve your golf.